So what are the top 10 best story twists in game history? So hello everyone, Modern here. So this is a continuation video, I suppose, on my why Noah wants to be a game writer. See, I don't want to just be negative all the time, right, you know? I don't want to be like, oh, this is bad or whatever. So today, I'll be happier instead, and I want to give you guys my top 10 story twists in video history. That being said though, I think I will try to make it a little more gameplay focused though. In my best case, you know what I mean? Like, it actually affects your game mechanics as well, and not just being a story twist. But anyway, let's get started. The video, guys. Please subscribe, press the like button, and check out my Why No One Wants to Be a Game Writer. So like I said, so that iterating that point, right? This video here, to some extent, is I guess an answer, because I got a lot of comments, right, in that video. People are like, oh, you think every game has bad storytelling. No. I'm not saying that games don't have good storytelling, right? I'm saying that most games that have good storytelling aren't actually written by game writers, it's usually by the game designers, right? So in this case here, again, I've shown you a list of my top 10 best twists in gaming history, which usually are that focus on gameplay. Coming in at number 10, 7th Saga. That's right, I'm an actual real gamer nerd, so I know games you never even heard about. It should be called top games twist you never even heard. Oh, whatever. So 7th Saga is a very interesting, incredibly hard role-playing game. So now, what makes 7th Saga's twist so interesting? Well, it is today, I suppose, a cliche. Basically, the main bad guy is also your master. The guy that set you out on a quest to get the 7th runes then. Because 7th Saga, because you have 7 heroes trying to find these 7 magical runes. And the main bad guy is the guy that, you know, is also one taught you and betrays you and takes the runes from you. But the interesting part is that when you play in this game, right, you learn about how the hero, of course, defeated the evil main bad guy in the past, right? And when you defeat this, so when you then find all the 7 runes and you basically beaten the game, you haven't actually beaten the game, because what happens then is that, of course, then your master betrays you, takes the runes, sends you back in time. Now, back in time, then you can then go and defeat him, right, and become then the hero you heard about. So that alone is a pretty nice twist to it, and I mean, yeah, to say today is cliche, but back in the days it was quite interesting. However, I bring it up, right, because it also was really important for your gameplay mechanics. So the reason I have this game in the list, right, as I mentioned, you're trying to find these 7 runes. And what happens is when you're losing the runes, right, you have to actually kind of restart playing the game from scratch in a way. And it's really interesting because before you have this time loop twist, you can change your party members, but after that, you're stuck with party members. And at least for me, I remember this so well, this thing, that because it basically screwed me over, right? Because my party members were based on me having the different runes, like healing rune, death and so on, right? But if you lose them, I can't support members anymore, you're kind of stuck. So it's a very interesting game because you're like, oh, it doesn't only like does it completely changes the game world. Suddenly the whole game world is redone. You lose all your powers, you can't travel and so on. But it also gives you so hard for actual gameplay mechanics, right? So it's a very interesting twist. Like, today, of course, cliche, your master is a bad guy, but it was a massive impact on actual gameplay mechanics, and for 93, a good twist, right? And that brings me to Red Dead Redemption 2, right? I remember my best friend told me about playing this game, and he had just seen his scene, and he was so angry, right, because he had to then, of course, get all the gears again. So I'm sorry, maybe I'm using too much of a gameplay designer, right? But not only was it a great scene, you're actually dying with the main character and so on, but I think it's so interesting, right, because you basically, like I said, right, similar to 7th Saga, now you have to replay this whole game basically, right, at level 1 again, right? And I just love that, you know. I love how the twist is like, okay, it's a huge scene, you actually die with the main character, like I said, but you also have to actually, you know, redo the game, right, you know? So it has to be very common for it. In both of these games, the twist affects the storyline, but also you as the player, right? And I find most other games basically even have a similar twist when the main character, someone dies or whatever, doesn't usually kind of affect, you know, like the mechanics, right? It's just a part of the storyline, and you get another character replacement, whatever. Except most FF games does that. When you lose a side character, it doesn't actually matter that much because you have 7 other playable characters. It doesn't really matter, right? FF2 had you losing like 4 or 5 characters, and the next character is basically better than them. So this to me mattered a lot more. Right? Now, of course, no story twist would ever be complete without having Nier in it. I mean, seriously, all the Nier games are very, very twist-oriented, right? And while both Automata and Replicant has this major twist, I still think the best twist isn't actually in Automata, even though it's a better game in general. But the best twist is, of course, that when you get to the last boss in Replicant, you learn that you are actually the bad guy, right? You were the bad guy all along. And I'll tell you here, spoilers for this video, yes, there will be a lot of you were actually the bad guy all along tropes, but certainly I think that this trope is really great, right? When the player learns that, wait, was I the bad guy? And so in Replicant then, you are actually fighting the real people, right? The real souls. The shades you're killing are actually humans trying to get their bodies back, right? And you as a replicant, as a gestalt, especially as an android, for argument's sake, an android, a robot, right? Going around killing now the actual people should have your body, right? So again, you are the bad guy. Now, the reason I have it here again, right, is because it also affects your game mechanics. So the way Nier works, right, is that when you beat the game the first time, you have to then replay, but when you replay the game second time, you now are gonna see what the shades are thinking, right? So if you beat Replicant 5 times, I believe it is, to get the full storyline, you also have to get the lunar tears or systems like that. But if you do all of this right, you actually get more and more storyline. So every time you replay it, you again finish the storyline. And as I mentioned earlier, this video is about, gameplay mechanics and twists, right, And that to me is really interesting because they kind of embedded, right, the whole replayability into the game. Of course, Automata was the same thing again, where when you beat in the game, you then unlock playing 9S, so you can beat the game again with him, right? And when playing 9S, then you hack the opponents, and then you can see more of the actual storyline. So again, that's like twisting it and combining it with game mechanics, what we're looking for here, right? Now, what is the best one? I mean, honestly, I think both of them have interesting twists to it, right? So, spoilers again for Automata. In that game, instead, they're all dead, the humans are dead, and you are Xbox One. But I don't know. I personally think that Replicant actually is better. Leave a comment below what do you guys think. I think Replicant actually has a better twist than Automata. Automata is a better game in general, has much better gameplay mechanics, like actual fighting and so on. But the actual twist in Replicant, that you are actually truly the bad guy from the whole storyline, and everything's just fake and so on, where in Automata, at least for me, it was kind of obvious, I think, that the humans were dead or whatever. I think that twist was big. To me, it's probably the Pascal twist. This Pascal scene, if anything, is probably a bigger twist than the general says. I don't know, I feel that Replicant has a better, hardcore twist on the general storyline. But, on the same time, though, my gameplay mechanic is worse because you're replaying it with the same character, where in Automata you have to change character and replay the bosses but with another character. That's a much better gameplay experience, right? So it's like Automata, arguably worse story, but much better gameplay. I am your father, Luke. Hopefully I spoiled someone now. Of course, Knights of the Old Republic, right? It's quite probably one of the fan favorite of twists in video game history. Basically, you were always the bad guy all along, and I was very similar to Nier. I know, like I said, I think a lot of the twists, honestly, a lot of the good twists in video games are that you were actually the bad guy, right? That is a recurring theme. But a reason I put this higher than, for example, Nier, right, is that while Nier, like I said, I think it's a great game and it reveals that you're the bad guy and so on, you can't actually do anything with that, right? In Replicant, oh, I'm the bad guy, and I replay the game and I learn how I'm even more the bad guy. You know what I mean? It doesn't really change that much. But when you play Knights of the Old Republic, which in my opinion, is probably the best Xbox game of all time, right? Classic Xbox. It is just like, oh, I'm the bad guy, but I can also still be the good guy, I guess. So it does it better, right? Because it really does it better. It's like, well, actually, I am the bad guy, but I'm also the good guy if I want to. And so by learning the truth in this game, right, you then as a player can decide if you want to keep playing what you're supposed to be playing, the bad guy, right, so to speak, following your deals. But you can also change that, because you have your own, the whole memory thing, so you kind of have your own personality to some extent, and you can go against your destiny or your own plan or whatever you call it, right? And that makes it a better gameplay. Certainly does. But at the same time, this might be controversial, as I said earlier, because it doesn't really remove your game mechanics, right? It doesn't change how you are. I just feel like you can affect a lot, but it doesn't, the other games I had previously, for example, Red Dead, you can lose your levels, right? So it's different. But I think this is also one of the few games where I felt the twist is amazing, and then you have this oh, what do I actually want to be right now, right? But like I said, I think all these games in this list are good game strategy, good storytelling, and good like gameplay mechanics. You knew it was coming. We can't get away from this scene, right? The Aerith. Spoiler! Death scene. It's still fun that some people know about this thing. But seriously, right? We couldn't get away from this scene. This is one of the most iconic, twisty scenes. It's probably the most saddest death scene in video game history, right? And what can I say? You couldn't really make this list without having Aerith dying, right? That being said, this isn't actually the biggest twist in Final Fantasy history, so we'll come into that later, to scrap that and so on. But seriously, right, it is a classic scene, right? You lose one of your party members, it's super sad, Sephiroth comes out of nowhere and so on, and I have to say it's just the most, I keep saying it, it's probably, if anything, the most iconic death scene, right, in video game history, if anything. But like I said earlier, this is a list about gameplay mechanics and storyline twist, right? And certainly this is still a gameplay mechanic because you actually permanently lose one of your party members. And I found that kind of interesting compared to, for example, FF2, as I mentioned earlier, because they also lose a party member. Not the first time they did it in the FF games, right? But in that game, a party member is dead, and you can pick up a new party member. It doesn't really matter. And because how the game mechanic works is that everyone can do anything, so it doesn't really matter, right? Aerith dying actually removes a unique party member, right? So it's a much bigger from a game mechanic as well. And now, having just played, of course, Rebirth and Remake earlier and so on, it certainly feels somewhat different because the thing is that those games are super long. No, but seriously, they have so much stuff going on, and spoilers, she dies in the end at Rebirth, right? Not really, but kinda. But I think that actually one mistake that Rebirth as Remake has done then, right, comparing them to now then, the old one, is that in OG, Aerith actually dies pretty early. You know what I mean? She dies like before half the game is finished, right? So removing a party member that early feels quite different. Now we're gonna see, of course, in the third part, but yeah, I think it's quite different now, honestly, in Rebirth, where you can play the first two parts, right? Which is like over 100 hours of game hours. And then she finally dies, and then it's like, oh, how long is part 3 gonna be? Or who knows how much change there. But there is quite, it hits you much differently, honestly, in the OG game. But a party member, again, there's a unique gameplay mechanic, unique ability and so on, dies off very early, and then you never get to replace them, right? So it's quite different. Now, a twist list will never be complete, right, without having, of course, Silent Hill 2, which might be my personal favorite story twist of all time. So the whole game is about saving your wife, or not, or really, or finding her murderer, or whatnot, right? And of course it's a horror game, it's Silent Hill, right? A very famous horror game. And this spoiler now is massive, and obviously it's a spoiler video, I keep saying it, but of course the reveal in Silent Hill 2 is that you actually killed your wife, right? And that was massive, which of course made this game just be an amazing, amazing twist. But for my gameplay mechanics style though, it doesn't do anything really. It's just the true ending of the game is to understand evil and so on. So the reason I have it here, though, is I want to mention it, okay? It's an amazing twist, arguably the best twist in game history. However, there's another game that does it better with a very, very similar premise, and it also affects the gameplay. And that game, of course, is Vagrant Story. So in Vagrant Story, you also is trying to find who killed my wife and my son, right? And that's the main storyline. You're trying to figure out who actually betrayed them. However, you of course learned that you were the one that actually killed your own wife and son. And the reason I put this over Silent Hill 2, right, even though they're both great games and they're both amazing PlayStation 1 games, is that in this game it actually matters more for the gameplay, right? So in Silent Hill, it's kind of like the revelation that ends the game, right? Oh, actually, you were the bad guy all along, this is game over now. In Vagrant Story, very similarly, main story, I'm trying to, who killed my wife? Oh, it was me, oh shit. But learning that, you also now learn that you're the bad guy, right? And becoming the bad guy, you can kind of team up there with the other bad guy, that's the good guy, or whatever and so on. But eventually it leads to you to getting the main bad guy, that wasn't actually the bad guy's powers, or actually his like tattoo on his back, right? That opens up the new bosses, new gameplay mechanics, so on. So this took that twist of learning that you are actually the perpetrator and made it better, right? So that's what I mean. Silent Hill is a great game. If this was purely what is the best, like this twist, it might be number one, but it doesn't really change the gameplay. I mean, the whole gameplay is around, I suppose, right? But I hope you get what I mean here. This game actually has more meaning to it. Okay, so you are the bad guy, and now I get new bad guy mechanics because of the reason, right? And then the good guy, or at least like I guess theoretically the good guy is actually the bad guy. I have to kill him and so on. So it matters more for the game actually. And I mean, Silent Hill is a little different though. It's more a horror game, but they're actually kind of similar games, honestly, because Vagrant Story is much more horrific than other role-play games of its time, I would say. Uh-oh! Kefka time. So a bigger twist than FF7, and it really is. It's a much bigger twist than FF7. It's actually Kefka winning. So the best twist, of course, in FF6 then, was that Kefka is trying to destroy the world. He's a mad clown, right? The mad jester. The thing is that Kefka actually wins, right? So to speak. He actually succeeds with his plan of destroying the planet. And this is, I think, to this day, the biggest twist in F history, and arguably the biggest twist then in video game history, right? Kefka actually succeeds with his dreams. He manages to destroy the planet, and of course it also affects you as a player, because you get a whole new game world to explore it. You lose your partner members, you have to find them and so on. It is an amazing twist, and actually a much bigger twist than FF7. Sure, F7 you die with Aerith, but this actually affects the gameplay a lot more. And also, you know, again, the main bad guy actually succeeds with his general goal. So even if you defeat him as the last final boss later, right, he still has managed to destroy the whole planet, more or less, right, and, you know, leaves the planet completely in ruin. Now, Saga Frontier 2, which actually is a much bigger twist than Aerith dying. And that is Gustave. So, Saga Frontier 2, right, is another JRPG, and I argue for it's the best JRPG in PlayStation 1. But the interesting thing in this game is that you're playing as Gustave, or as William. You can change between the characters, right? You really are following the main character since the day he's born as a baby. And you have to follow him growing up, right? He can't use magic, so he's exiled by his father, his mother dies, his parents have to kill him and so on, and there's all this storyline. See him, like, you know, defeat his own brother, and then his nephew dies, so on. So it's like a really long storyline. Then he dies. And this is, to me, still the biggest twist from a single character's death scene in video game history. And that's the death of the main character, Gustave. Because you play this character, right, since he was born. Since the first day he's born, you're exiled and everything, you're following this guy for 30 years, and then he just dies. And he doesn't even die like a heroic fight, it's not an epic fight. It's way less epic than Last of Us 2, where at least the main antagonist is playable. Okay, no. He just dies from like random monsters you couldn't defeat. And he dies there. You can't, it's like an endless fight beat. You can't win it. You die with him, and then you keep playing as his friend instead. And this is like only a third part of the game. Like, it's crazy. Like, I've never seen a game does this still to this day, where to kill off the main character, spend like the first 20 hours building up, right? And then you play as his best friend, and then he also dies, and then you play as his grandkid instead. So the game is like crazy, and then he also dies. But yeah, like, you keep playing it. And on the other side of the game, right, you're playing as William, and then you play as his son Rich, and then he also dies. Then you play as his daughter Virginia instead. So today you also have characters dying, and it's really weird how all game connects here. And I never seen a game take so many chances of like killing off the characters. Because you lose like half the cast in this game. And it's just really crazy. But just having all this build up, right, you know, it's a much more gripping death scene than Aerith, like 100%, because this is like if Cloud would die, you know, after like, yeah, but you also follow Cloud way more, you knew everything about Cloud, and he also dies. That would be more shocking, right, and you have to play Aerith instead. That's kind of how this game is. And of course then, he's also the best character in the game, and by him dying, you're losing out on the whole XP level and so on. So the reason this game is also an amazing game from a plot twist mechanical wise is because this game, you can't grind this game. You can't like go around and farm and so on. Only in very specific games. It's very hard to level up and so on. So when a character dies or gets too old and so on to stay in your party, they actually will leave your party, right? And you lose their XP and their skills and so on. So by losing the main character here quite early in the game, you're losing out on your best character. And it's even worth spending time with him in the grinding and so on. It's really, really weird in this game. And it really massively affects you on what can be carried over and so on between different characters and the weapons. And this game is incredibly hard to, so you might be like, well, I know this character's gonna die here, so I'm gonna unequip them and then let them die permanently, and then I will keep the stuff on the other character, right? But seriously, from a single character's death, Saga Frontier 2 is the best, biggest twist I've ever seen in my life. Now, what is the single one game then that's even more twisty than Saga Frontier 2? Well, of course it is. You know, it's Ruby Squaresoft. Xenogears. This game is like M. Night Shyamalan's wet dream to the max. So never has a game been as twisty, has as many twists as the Xenogears. I want to mention before we get into this game though, that for a long time on this list I had 13 Sentinel Aiges Rim on it, which has also equally amount of twists. And this game's actually all kind of similar with like mechas and humans and time traveling and twists and turns and several playable characters. But the thing is that the gameplay is used to twists to Sentinel. Nothing actually changes by the twist in the game. It's kind of similar to Silent Hill 2. Like yes, the game has like a 5,000 twists, but they're revealed at the end of the game. And doesn't actually affect the gameplay at all, because the gameplay is a twist. But certainly, this is probably the game that's the most twist, if any game, because every chapter is like 5 twists, right? But again, this is story-driven. Now, Xenogears that has, similar to Sentinel, absurdly amount of twists, right? Everything is like, no, actually, religion is fake, and this thing is that thing, and hell is the good guys, and heaven is the bad guys, and that actually you are Lucifer, and actually you're Adam, and you're God, and the game is just crazy. But it also affects your characters, right? Your party members, and your party members' new abilities. So it's more similar to Saga Frontier 2, where a character actually will, you know, be removed or get buffed or whatever by the twist as well, right? So it has actual gameplay mechanics, and also being the craziest, most plot-driven twist game that's ever been made. So a lot of people probably think that Xona Blade, right? Xona Chronicles, or whatever, those games has a lot of twists. And they do, but they don't compare to Xenogears. So I'm just gonna try to break it down here, okay, to some extent, because this game is the craziest thing ever. And I actually wrote like a essay on this thing back in like senior high school. Senior high school could pick, you know, like a book or whatever, right, to, you know, do a review. And I was like, I'm gonna do a review on like Xenogears then. So I know this game very well, played it many times, right, and it is insane game, okay. So what you see here is the main character, right, and then you see his waifu, his love interest, and they are actually been married several times. So we are basically playing as Adam, right, and she's Eve then, and we have died more than once in the game history, and every time you die you get reincarnated together, and you're always destined to meet each other. So at that point, right, the game is quite twisty. That'll be enough to have one of the bigger twists in the game. But no, this game takes it way, way, way further. So heaven then is an actual place where, of course, then these like high advanced mechas are the aliens, right? So this is a big part of the storyline, getting to heaven and so on. However, heaven, of course, are evil, and the good guys are actually hell, right? And the reason that you even think the hell are the bad guys is because heaven, of course, has created the religion, the church, basically Christianity, right? And they created Christianity to, of course, push their agenda, the hell are bad and so on, and Lucifer, whatever. But they are actually the bad guys, and they're experimenting on humans, and they're throwing them out. Then they dump humans' bodies on Earth again, which turns these humans into like zombie monster demon things, right? Then they blame hell for that, of course. And then the Christianity guys have these like vampire slayer guys, or the demon hunters, we call them, and they are trained then by heaven to hunt their own monsters, just to have this facade going on and so on. So it's a kind of 1984 thing going on there. We were also the bad guys to our own demise. It is really, really weird. And then, of course, Cain, the leader of Heaven, the are actually bad guys, killed you in the past, right? When you were younger and so on. So the game just keeps going with this thing. And this is just the beginning, guys, okay? So your mother is actually like Satan or Lucifer or something. So she tormented you as the main character as a kid, because she knew that you were Adam, right? And she's basically like the snake of Eden or something. She's Lucifer. And then that made you snap. So there's a continent in this game world that you destroyed, okay? So the main character has 4 different personalities. I'm gonna kid you guys. And he destroyed one of the continents before the game starts, because he went crazy when his mother, which is Lucifer then, tortured him, right, in the past. Okay, so it's really weird. And that doesn't even end it there, because 500 years before the storyline started, the main character died. But he can't die, because he get reincarnated, right? But he died because he turned so evil, so his body is still remaining, but his soul died. So one of the main antagonists is yourself from the past, 500 years older evil self, and also one of the antagonists is also yourself in your own body, because you have 4 personalities. And then your mom is also one of the bad guys, because she's like Lucifer. And then you have a daughter from 4,000 years ago that you can find and revive her because she's a part of like your wife, and then your evil mom in that past nuked your daughter and her house or whatever. And also, the main antagonist, the 5 years ago, guys, he is fused with God, which is actually a machine that landed on this planet before the game storyline started, which is the first cutscene actually, which actually is a spacecraft crashing on the Earth, and then this machine fused with this guy, not believing it's God. And so you get the point. I want to go over it more. So I guess it's just crazy. This game has so many twists and turns. There's been no big game as insane when it comes to the storyline and its twist as Xenogears. It's just crazy. And from a game mechanic standpoint, yes, your daughter, for example, is a playable character, but she's a secret playable character. So it's Vincent F7, you're going to find her, right? So if you try to find the destroyed continent, and on that continent you can find an underground, like an other continent under it, which is not what you destroyed, but what your mom destroyed. And they go down there, do this side quest, blah blah, and so on, for hours, and you can eventually find your daughter, which is then your daughter with your wife, right? But 4,000 years prior, like in a solid thing, and you get her as a playable character. So there's a lot of this like understanding, twists and turns of fighting her, right? Then in the game you have this mecha sort of fighting and so on, right? And when you get to like hell will teach you that heaven has put its limiters on humans and animals or whatever, so you can't use like your full potential. And then hell will unlock, you have this rabbit masker with you that can fight, and then they will unlock that masker's power so you can turn into like Godzilla or something. And this game is just crazy. You're like, what? So it also affects the gameplay and so on. This game has like absurdly amount of twists and turns. But again, it also does actually affect the gameplay. For example, you can make your mecha turn into your evil Crimson mecha when you have unlocked your inner evil self, right? One of your evil personalities, your main evil personality. Then you can use that, right? One of the other characters can find their ancestors' mecha and so on. So the game is very, very strange, okay? This game is like absurd, but I will say that it is probably, I have to admit here, probably one of the least like actual affecting your gameplay mechanics. It does affect them quite severely with some characters, but the game has this so insane amount of twists and turns, and like literally the craziest storyline ever. I don't think it necessarily has the best storyline ever, to be honest, but it definitely has the most insane storyline. If I just made like a top 10 list of like the most craziest, weirdest storyline of history of video games, this game would absolutely be number one. I have never in my life seen a game that has such an incredible, weird storyline and, you know, a massive quantity of characters. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. So, it has to be up there, right? And like I said, Third Sentinel has probably the most twist, but again, the game is more like a visual novel, and nothing actually affects the gameplay. Unfortunately in that game, no matter how you play the game, it doesn't actually matter. Like, you find out the twists and triggers, but it doesn't actually change your character abilities or whatever. Doesn't really do anything to the actual gameplay, and so that's why I kind of put it as a side note. But it kind of reminds me of this game, right? It's very mecha focused and so on. That's why I mention it, because it has probably the most like rapid number of twists, right? Third Sentinel. It has like 20,000 twists per minute. But also, I have to say, as its drawback though, when you play that game, it's so many twists constantly that you're basically like, I don't trust anything anymore. Right? I mean, in this game, it's more like the game is much longer, so it's more like padded out. Right? The twists and turns kind of come at you every now and then, and they're also much more bigger and grander. When a game does like M. Night Shyamalan twist every second, you're like, okay, like I assume that you're lying to me all the time, so I'm just gonna ignore you. A little bit of that, right? Anyway, guys, what do you think about the list? So that video, guys, subscribe, slap it, and have a great day.